let me read to you what he said. He said, and I quote, they had very few people. You know, he was disagreeing with what happened in Makerere University. There were some people who were classified as positive when they were not by a laboratory at Makerere. Now, this is what again he said. They have very few people, only 3 people working there. And I think they got tired. They started not doing things properly. And some samples, which the Ministry of Health should clarify maybe tomorrow or the day after, were classified as positive when they were not. That's what the president said. And the president, maybe he was right or not, but his statement is clear. He's the president of the country. So whatever he says, people have to go on with it. So do you think the government did enough research to really find out whether these cases were right or wrong, Sarah?
It is him even coming out to complain after all the amount of money that has been collected for the particular cause is so disheartening, especially coming from him. Lots of money has been collected from donations have come in. You've seen companies giving a lot of money, and we've seen the budget. They allocated about 81 billion for this. Why are we having only 3 people handling this? Why are we having only 3 people doing the testing with all the money that has, because if you've allocated over 81 billion, we have companies that have given in money. We have World Health Organization has given them money. IMF has given them money. You have the US mission has given them money. USAID has given them money. Why are we having only 3 people doing the testing? Definitely the 3 people will get tired. It's like, you know, with all the COVID cases US has, you allocate 3 doctors per hospital. It is completely impossible. So where is the money? Before he comes up to complain, because there are things he should not even complain about publicly, because again, for us, it justifies how rotten his regime is and how incompetent he has been, and he still is even after 35 years. Because for you to come out and start complaining for us, that are, you know, there are only 3 people, they results maybe were they did not do a right job, or maybe they were tired. Definitely 3 people are bound to get tired doing one job every day and maybe for long hours, and there are only 3 people, and you may find they're underpaid. But we are going to ask is, do we have only 3 people who can test for COVID-19 in Uganda? And if that is not the case, why didn't we hire more people to do the job? Because a lot of money has been, because the Minister of Health has not even come out to break for us what they did with the 81 billion they got. We saw money being allocated to the military to do whatever they said, operation, whatever the case they called it. What has the money done? Because it looks like the money is not needed in the military operations as they
that's the money. Probably, according to current reports, Sarah, that's some of the money used to buy masks that are now distributed into Uganda. So don't you think it's a fair deal that the government is using what was given to help keep Uganda safe?
No, but they are misallocating the money. If the money was meant to get people who are going to be in charge of testing, because first of all, you're throwing Ugandans in a state of panic. First of all, from day one, we knew they were adding in all these figures. Figures were escalating just because they wanted to get money from the donor organizations, of which they got the money. Because they should look at, because, for example, if right now you have people, you're claiming the people who are testing maybe are not enough, you have only 3 people, why didn't you allocate them money? Why don't you allocate that unit money? Because it's a very key, important, element of the entire COVID-19 situation. We've had cases, you've had, I think you've read about the cases where some of the drivers who are tested positive in Uganda tested negative in Kenya. What does that explain? It looks like Uganda is more interested in just having numbers, but they're not interested in giving Ugandans the actual number. But who does this affect? When you have numbers that are escalating and look big, yet they are fake or they don't exist, then the common Ugandan is going to be put in a lockdown. The common Ugandan is going to suffer because at the end of the day, you've not provided them food. And then you're giving out all these weird numbers that are cannot even be justified. So at the end of the day, who is going to suffer? It is not Museveni, it is not people around him, it is the common Ugandan, because it's going to be put in another lockdown. I've just heard the Minister for Health saying that Uganda might end up going into another lockdown. But who is suffering? Who is affected by all this? you've seen other countries in the world, because of the way they've been managing the situation.
Sorry, if I cut you short, the president and minister saying Uganda is going back into another lockdown because the people who are giving guidelines are not respecting these guidelines. So that's what is forcing the president to go back. Remember, the president said, if you die, the government is willing to bury you. So what does that tell you?
Because they allocated money to the wrong places. The money, I'm seeing policemen, I'm seeing army men beating people. They should have used a good chunk of money to sensitize the masses and tell them the importance of wearing a mask. But again, I think what I'm seeing right now, there's a mistrust within the masses, because some Ugandans don't even believe there's COVID-19 in Uganda, and don't blame them because of the way the situation has been handled. If money has been stolen, if within this same situation of COVID-19, you have ministers allocating themselves money, you have all these amounts of money going to State House, you have Museveni giving gifts here and there within the situation, you have the military getting money, and you're asking yourself for doing what? You have Ugandans who are put in a lockdown and they were promised that they were going to be given food, and it's been 2 months, people never got the food. Don't blame Ugandans to even start assuming and think there is no COVID-19 in Uganda and they behave the way they behave. Because if they had done this right and you sensitize, I think a good portion of money would have gone to sensitizing the masses in knowing exactly what is COVID-19, does it affect? Because I've had cases, I've had situations where I talk to someone in Uganda and they say, oh, by the way, this thing is easy, it's just a normal flu. They don't even understand the gravity of COVID-19. For them, they assume it's a normal flu. And you tell them, my dear, that's not the case. I've been around people who have COVID-19. I've been on a floor where you've lost about 10 people dying of COVID-19, or even more, 20, 30 people on the same floor. So they don't, someone who has experienced it or who has been around people who have died, maybe like me, I know what it is. And I've not stopped taking precaution. When you check, I have masks in the house, I have masks in my car, I have the N95, I have the normal masks, I have the sanitizers. I take precaution. I put on full PPE because I understand the gravity.
But do you think, Sarah, before I leave you, do you really think Ugandans are following the guidelines that were put by the president and his team? Ugandans are not following some of them are not following, some maybe are following, some are not. Because this is what I've explained to you. It is also when the government fails, for example, you put people in a lockdown and you've not given them food. And you're telling them there is coronavirus. And you've not sensitized them enough even to believe what you're saying is true. Because you saw videos moving all over social media where the people who claimed who are put in quarantine and they said they had coronavirus were dancing, singing, and they behaved like they were so normal. You've had I've seen a program by Kazibwe Bashir where someone called and said for him he doesn't have corona but he's been quarantined. You've had all these stories come out where people say they were on their way after 14 days of quarantine and then they were told they were taken back. So this the way all this information has come out to the public, it looks like a scheme or a scam of how government has been stealing money and getting money for their personal gains. Right,
so don't blame Ugandans to behave the way they behave, because government has not behaved any better. In the situation of COVID-19, government has not done anything serious apart from locking people down to show that there is really COVID-19 in Uganda. The only because if you're saying there is COVID-19 in Uganda and you're stealing money that is supposed to fight that is meant to fight the virus. If you're saying there is COVID-19 in Uganda and you can't even provide food to people you put in a lockdown. If you're saying there is COVID-19 in Uganda, but everything you're doing is contrary to what you're saying, don't blame Ugandans. Don't blame Ugandans to doubt what you're saying.
So remembering in Richard, the government started with the mask project and it was willing to give out these masks.
They should look at, because for example, if right now you have people, you're claiming the people who are testing maybe are not enough, you have only 3 people, why didn't you allocate them money? Why don't you allocate that unit money? Because it's a very key important, element of the entire COVID-19 situation. We've had cases, you've had, I think you've read about the cases where some of the drivers who are tested positive in Uganda tested negative in Kenya. What does that explain? It looks like Uganda is more interested in just having numbers, but they're not interested in giving Ugandans the actual number. But who does this affect? When you have numbers that are escalating and look big, yet they are fake or they don't exist, then the common Ugandan is going to be put in a lockdown. The common Ugandan is going to suffer because at the end of the day, you've not provided them food. And then you're giving out all these weird numbers that are cannot even be justified. So at the end of the day, who is going to suffer? It is not Museveni, it is not people around him, it is the common Ugandan, because he's going to be put in another lockdown. I've just heard the Minister for Health saying that Uganda might end up going into another lockdown. But who is suffering? Who is affected by all this? You've seen other countries in the world, because of the way they've been managing the situation.
Sorry, if I cut you short, the president and minister saying Uganda is going back into another lockdown because the people who are giving guidelines are not respecting these guidelines. So that's what is forcing the president to go back. Remember, the president said, if you die, the government is willing to bury you. So what does that tell you?
Because they allocated money to the wrong places. The money, I'm seeing policemen, I'm seeing army men beating people. They should have used a good chunk of money to sensitize the masses and tell them the importance of wearing a mask. But again, I think what I'm seeing right now, there's a mistrust within the masses, because some Ugandans don't even believe there's COVID-19 in Uganda, and don't blame them because of the way the situation has been handled. If money has been stolen, if within this same situation of COVID-19, you have ministers allocating themselves money, you have all these amounts of money going to State House, you have Museveni giving gifts here and there within the situation, you have the military getting money, and you're asking yourself for doing what? You have Ugandans who are put in a lockdown and they were promised that they were going to be given food, and it's been 2 months, people never got the food. Don't blame Ugandans to even start assuming and think there is no COVID-19 in Uganda, and they behave the way they behave. Because if they had done this right, and you sensitize, I think a good portion of money would have gone to sensitizing the masses in knowing exactly what is COVID-19, does it affect, because I've had cases, I've had situations where I talk to someone in Uganda and they say, oh, by the way, this thing is easy, it's just a normal flu. They don't even understand the gravity of COVID-19. For them, they assume it's a normal flu. And you tell them, my dear, that's not the case. I've been around people who have COVID-19. I've been on a floor where you've lost about 10 people dying of COVID-19, or even more, 20, 30 people on the same floor. So they don't, someone who has experienced it or who has been around people who have died, maybe like me, I know what it is. And I've not stopped taking precaution. When you check, I have masks in the house, I have masks in my car, I have the N95, I have the normal masks, I have the sanitizers. I take precaution. I put on full PPE because I understand the gravity.
But you think, Sarah, before I leave you, do you really think Ugandans are following the guidelines that were put by the president and his team? Ugandans are not following some of them are not following, some maybe are following, some are not. Because this is what I've explained to you. It is also when the government fails, for example, you put people in a lockdown and you've not given them food. And you're telling them there is coronavirus. And you've not sensitized them enough even to believe what you're saying is true. Because you saw videos moving all over social media where the people who claimed who are put in quarantine, and they said they had coronavirus, were dancing, singing, and they behaved like they were so normal. You've had I've seen a program by Kazibwe Bashir where someone called and said for him he doesn't have corona but he's been quarantined. You've had all these stories come out where people say they were on their way after 14 days of quarantine, and then they were told they were taken back. So this, the way all this information has come out to the public, it looks like a scheme or a scam of how government has been stealing money and getting money for their personal gains. So don't blame Ugandans to behave the way they behave, because government has not behaved any better. In the situation of COVID-19, government has not done anything serious apart from locking people down to show that there is really COVID-19 in Uganda. The only because if you're saying there's COVID-19 in Uganda and you're stealing money, that is supposed to fight that is meant to fight the virus. If you're saying there's COVID-19 in Uganda and you can't even provide food to people you put in a lockdown, if you're saying there's COVID-19 in Uganda, but everything you're doing is contrary to what you're saying, don't blame Ugandans. Don't blame Ugandans to doubt what you're saying. So remembering in Richard, the government started with the mask project, and it was willing to give out these masks to the public, and many volunteers who were willing to give out these masks were stopped Government claiming that they have the authority and they have the money, they have everything to distribute to them. Now, it started with 31 millions or plus, billions plus, and now we are looking at 81, a difference of 500 or 50. Let's look into this, Richard. And I want to ask you, if you see how these numbers are growing every single day, what does that tell you?
Let's be clear. This is our country that we are fighting for. In power, the way they are doing things is totally wrong. This is totally wrong. We are honest. We are not saying yes or no. But if it was people power government that was in place, or Honorable Chairman, the way he would have done things right, the first day of lockdown, the country would have been given masks. They would have brought in testing kits in millions. We saw it right from the beginning that the priorities of the government was to show military force and beating and killing people. That was forcing presidential directive. People have died in this. Now, if it was people power into government, the first thing they would have done is to bring in masks, because I told you recently that I called one of the companies here in Wolfram that makes one of the best testing kits, and we are giving us at $25 per testing kit. This would have been thrown in the country with the airline that we have in the country. They would have brought in at least 1 million kits. These kits would test right and get results within 1 hour. You have the results.
But you have Richard, you've always advocated for having made in Uganda, and this time the masks were made in Uganda. Don't you think that was a great move to support Uganda and get what to do?
No. This thing came in abruptly. This is a global pandemic. There was no time to waste. As soon as it would have come in, the testing kits, about 1 million would have brought in for the beginning. That's $25 million, even less, because this is the wholesale amount, maybe 20 or 19. The major areas would have been well tested and locked down, and then preventive measures would have been taken, like masks for every person, and then be given food. Now the government, what it did was to tell people, get off the street. If you get out of the house, we kill you. That's what they did. Now things are getting out of the house. Look what was done on the borderline. The drivers from Kenya, from Tanzania, they come, they get they take the samples, and the samples are driven to Uganda Virus Institute for testing. If we approve that it's positive, then we allocate you where? All the way near the border. All this line that this person has been going through, he has been spreading coronavirus. Now things are going to get out of hand. And let me give you something very, very clear out of the president's mouth. I was reading one of the monitor in Uganda where Museveni says that the current budget that had just been mentioned by the minister had wasteful expenditure, and said right now people are dying of coronavirus. He himself, out of his mouth, I can give you the newspaper and you read it. So that means that the political cloud that coronavirus does not kill people to gain political advantage in an election, an international community, as communists do, was exposed. So people have been dying and people have been keeping quiet because of political advantage to show now everything is going to blow up and see where the country is going to go. So the whole thing,
all right.
Yes.
Sure. So, you know, it's something that we can discuss over and over, and we don't get a solution as yet, but we know that the country is doing their best, not just Uganda as a government is doing its best to make sure that Ugandans are safe, but at the same time, Ugandans are also doing their level best to make themselves safe. So let's get out of that. Let's get out of that, because that story is going to go on and on until we know that at least 20 billion have been lost or have been gained. Let's leave that story alone. Let's look at the death of Major General Kasirye Gwanga. It's just one of the key stories that happened this week. For some people, it came as a surprise. For others, they knew that was going to happen soon, and because we have had different stories from different angles. But for the first time, this government was strict that everybody was allowed to go on about for public COVID-19 and some of the why. So let me me ask you, Nordin, what waiting on the key things that are happening in the country? What does it mean on the rest of the army generals who are now, we have seen generals dying every now and then, and these are some of the key people who are saying President Museveni is going to come back 2021. General Kasegwang is gone. What does that mean? Nordin.
Thank you so much, David, and the viewers. It's quite saddening to have such a great soldier, a great Ugandan dying at this particular time, because he has been very prevalent in fighting for the rights of the people. And actually, during the COVID-19 situation, was very, very prevalent when it came to people that were not really complacent to the situation. I remember some of the videos that were being shown, and it was trying to push people out of such kind of situation. So it's really very saddening to the Ugandans, and to me in particular, it was quite shocking. And however, what we have to understand is that there are a lot of there's a lot of things that we have to draw from such kind of death. One, what we have to know is that the principle of evolution says that everybody has this time and comes up and goes. There is always a new generation taking over the old generation. But what is very important is the legacy that a person leaves behind. Is it something that is very important that people can look at and admire or take up? Two, we must know that working with impunity is not the best thing that we should have in our community. Remember, regardless of other factors, the goodness and the other side of Kasirye, everybody knows him as somebody who was very, very arrogant, was very rude. He could speak his mind out regardless of who he's talking to. And actually, one of the most important things that people have known Kasirye is out of controversy. He has been a man of controversy. He could not leave anything that came up without commenting about it the way he feels. And he couldn't fear saying anything, regardless of whether it was pro-government or against the government, though he was part of the government. So all these ones are showing us that time comes for a person that you might think is very, very, very important for the country, and then he goes away. So the mortality nature of human being is that shouldn't make people arrogant, shouldn't make people work with impunity, shouldn't make people think that all the time they'll be living, because man has time to live, and that time must be, we have to make a legacy in it. And thirdly, people should also understand that living in countries like Uganda, the heart of Kasirye, I think, will be remembered for long, because he was a kind of person that really loved his country. He loved his tribe as a Muganda, and he will always talk about Uganda as an institution, and was very proud of being part of the Buganda Kingdom. I was reading a very good story, and I was sharing with, I was trying to watch Dr. Ashraf Semogere's, when he was being interviewed, and there's something that came up commonly from various people that were observing Kasirye life. And they were relating to a story of, you remember what happened in 1986 when there was a kind of coup in which the then Minister of Cooperative, NYANZI, was one of the people that were charged with treason. And the way Kasirye played cool, because he was one of the principal witnesses, and finally he played cool because of possibly being a Muganda, and the people that were being attacked were being prosecuted with Uganda. So it was quite he lived a very good life, and a very controversial but positive life, and actually he deserves to be named among the heroes of Uganda. And I always be very comfortable to refer to him when making research, refer to him in his speeches, because he made very many speeches that are very relevant to the political and the social and economic situation that we have in Uganda.
Sure. All right. So, Sarah, if I come to you, Sarah, this was who somehow supported your movement, somehow supported Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi, but he said during his lifetime that having Honorable Kyagulanyi come 2021 won't be a good move, but he's a good guy who can come in 2026. What's your comment on that?
For starters, General Kasirye he never missed his word. He said whatever he wanted to say, and that was his opinion, because at the end of the day, we cannot always assume that President Museveni still has time. His time is up. You cannot, 35 years cannot become 40 years. What he didn't do in 35, he cannot do in 40. But he's a man who had so many statements. I was watching one of his videos where they were talking of people who are patriotic in Uganda, and he said there are no patriotic people in Uganda. And they referred to him to President Museveni. He said, all those are thieves. He said, don't even call me patriotic, because there's no people who are not willing to fight, do things for their country, but are more interested in enriching their pockets. They're not patriotic. I think he's someone, if we are going to remember him, he was never afraid to say whatever he wanted to say, even if it rubbed President Museveni the wrong way. Because he served in government, he was a governor. I think he called himself governor. That was Muwonge district. And then when he retired from active politics, and then retired again from the army, he kept saying whatever he wanted to say, even if it rubbed Museveni the wrong way. That's one thing I liked about him. He was not, and for some people that came off as being arrogant, but again, he's not so many people who have worked under Museveni are willing to say the truth. People always love sugarcoating or buttering whatever they have to say, because they don't like rubbing the old man the wrong way. But Kasirye Gwanga, even to his time of death, he said whatever he wanted to say. He was never afraid to say anything, even if it hurt the president. And if we are naming people who are patriotic, people who love their country, people who are willing to say whatever they say, he was one of them. At the time of his death, if people can remember, he had started a campaign to start fighting people who are cutting down forests. I don't know that is.
That's exactly, sorry, the very question I was going to ask you. The legacy of planting trees, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think people are going to keep up the spirit that we need to save the environment? Do you think people are going to keep up the spirit that, well, we are in opposition, we are in government, let's work together to make sure that at least each one can plant a tree to save the future generation?
Uganda, where it is, they need to think. No, they need to think seriously about the environment. There is a lot of deforestation has happened in Uganda. For reason, people are cutting trees for charcoal, people are cutting trees for, and I applaud the general. May he rest eternal peace. Whatever he was, the venture he was going on, all he was doing was the right one. Government has failed completely to sensitize Ugandans. Because if it was a government initiative to make sure that every homesteader at least plants 5 trees or has a tree or 2 trees in their backyard, it makes a lot of sense. You have, if you still having, right. I think it's of recent that we've started having mudslides in some of the areas that are where people are building on slopes of the mountains and all those and such areas, just because, and these mudslides are not happening because they used not happen 30 years ago. They are largely happening because there's been a great deforestation. People have been cutting down trees for one reason or another. So the cause was right, the cause was genuine. And I think as people in government, before even waiting for position, and what I would encourage right now, people in opposition right now, even the leader of People Power, Bobiwine, is to encourage the supporters, encourage them, come out and encourage them to plant a tree. Let everyone, even if you don't plant any other tree, plant a tree that you'd benefit from. Plant an avocado tree, because at the end of the day, you're gonna eat avocados from those trees. And living in a country where you buy 1, 2, 3 avocados at almost 20,000 shillings, if I convert it to Ugandan money, when you go to a store, 3 tiny avocados, I get them for, if I convert it to Ugandan shilling, it's about 20,000 or even more. I start now to appreciate, you know, some of those fruits. Here, I know where you live, it's hard to get jackfruit. One time when I went to buy jackfruit, just a small portion of jackfruit was almost $15. And I'm like, for $15, if I convert it in Ugandan money, I would get like a full, you know, without being cut in pieces, I would get like 3-4 jackfruits of that. So I think even Ugandans right now in a position, we should encourage them at least, let Ugandans have an initiative to plant a tree. Maybe every year, let it be an initiative, because at the end of the day, you're gonna have Uganda turn into a semi-desert, because there's a lot of, you've had drought seasons coming on where a number of months people have not had water, because there's a lot of deforestation that has taken place, and we should not take lightly.
Right.
And the government is not going to do anything. That's one, because the government, when you look at the biggest culprits of deforestation, it is government. It is people who are in government. It is people who give licenses. You've seen there's, I think part of Mabila was given to grow sugarcane, but sugarcane to the environment, it does nothing. So if they are willing to give a part of the forest to grow sugarcanes that does nothing to the environment, I know, yes, they're interested in getting money, but even for the sugar consumers, sugar has never been healthy to the body at all. So at the end of the day, I think it is going to take, we know government has failed. Now it is going to take us as opposing government to start encouraging, because some of these initiatives are doable. Because if you can pass over the information to the masses and let them know the importance of at least having trees within their backyard. You've seen so many times whenever it rains, people's houses end up being de-roofed. And why is it happening? Because there are no trees to play as safeguards in case these strong winds come up. So I don't even know. And sometimes I wonder, let me finish up. Sometimes I wonder if Uganda ever gets some of the, I know right now we are moving into summer. Some of the areas that don't get winter, especially areas like Florida, they are going to go into, you know, they have those
hurricanes and all that.
Hurricanes and all that. If hurricane happen in Uganda, because these areas, we've seen communities being wiped out completely. An entire community, all houses down on the floor. And then they have to rebuild the community again. So yeah, I think our leaders, some of them are exposed, they've been able to travel, they watch TV, they see all these things. They should, how long is it gonna take them? Just imagine they have a hurricane and it just happens around Kampala. How many buildings is it gonna take down? And how long is it gonna take them to rebuild back Kampala? So these are things people are going to start considering. And because they're doable, we need to sensitize people to start planting trees. Plant 1, plant 2, even if, because that is an initiative anyone can do, whether an organization, whether people in opposition. We should encourage people, because if hurricanes or if these mudslides happen, they affect individuals and government doesn't care about them.
All right, so let me bring in Richard on that point. Richard, if I ask you, I would take you as a veteran. You have been there since the times of the Kasirye and all that. So, according to you, what legacy do you think Major General Kasirye left?
David, let me give you a good opinion here. Whatever happened to the death of Kasirye is history. We shall know it in just a few more months. We shall know there will be a commission of inquiry, and it will come out how he died, the negligence, how they never treated him to take political advantage. But the goodness of Kasirye, because he was a security advisor that was going to advise people power, and he has been advising Honorable Chagwai of how to handle the leadership. Because the way you see the country today, that has been militarized by one political party and one tribe in all areas, it had to get someone of good knowledge of the army and on all the general trusted in the inner circle to stabilize the country. That was the most important thing for Kasirye. And bad enough, we lost him. The government in power is celebrating for the loss of Kasirye because he was a good man against the most project. Now, let's see the advantages and the disadvantages we have here. First of all, as people power is going to take government, Kasirye would have been a good man to stabilize the military and maneuver the army for the stability of the government and the security for the whole country. The second thing, Let's give a working example. Will he manage Honorable Chagwe, because they say he's a young man? Let's give a working example for King Hussein of Jordan, because it's the same scenario that King Hussein of Jordan was in when he was coming in as a young man to take over power of Jordan. How did he maneuver such a things? He had the inner circle of people that were advising him in the government, the prime ministers, and the inner trusted people in the military. He had the opposition of the free officers movement, because we were going to make a coup that he crashed. He had the British occupation of Jordan. He had all these political and trade agreements with the British and other Arab nations that were around him. What happened? How did he stabilize the country? If Honorable Chagwe takes, I think he's a very good man and he's a good advisor. He takes good advice. He will manage to take the same steps, because these people are sleeping. Don't you think that they could let such a man die for no reason? I'll give you an example. In 1980, what happened? Paulo Muwonge, with this group of thugs, armed from NYO Marshall, armed the thugs, and they started killing people when Lule was president, to make sure that there was instability in the, it was 679, to make sure that there was instability in the country and people were dying, so that Milton Obote would come back. All these things we see. We sit down and see and watch. What are we going to do? What is Honorable Chagwe going to do? How is he going to maneuver such a thing like Kasegwanga is gone? How is he going to handle it? All these things, we look at it and see. We shall manage. You shall manage. All these things we see. What is people are going to do? The international community is on his side. There's UN stabilizing forces that are going to be called in the country. They think that they have got a political maneuver, the military maneuver. They are wrong. He will manage, and he will manage the country, and it will stabilize.
All right. Sure. So I want to thank you guys. We've having many comments coming in, and today I'm not going to have that chance to do that to read them. But let's finish up with this, guys. We have a few minutes to go. Let's finish up with this. In your position, more specifically, People Power and FDC. When Dr. Sarah Nyanzi came out recently and posted a picture displaying who she wanted to become, the president, the prime minister, the vice president, there has been a lot of controversies that are coming up against her, that she's not part of the FDC anymore. Or people are saying that she's not really doing what the opposition should be doing. She's kind of dividing the opposition, and she responded vigorously. So, but let me. I'm not going to start with Sarah. Let me start with Nurdin. What you see in your position today? If one member of a certain political party suggests someone else to become a president, it becomes a crime. Same story. Members of People Power, when they say, "Oh, we need somebody from FDC," those people, whatever their suggestions or ideas are, it becomes. What happens in such a situation? What do you see happening in the next coming general elections?
Thank you so much, David, and the viewers. To me, I see this is normal. That is what we call social dynamism. Social dynamism involves a situation whereby people always have what we call identification of protectionism. That is a situation whereby everybody that belongs to a certain society tries to defend it, the way try to protect its people from being taken away to other institutions. So for FDCs, whoever, if you from a certain organization and then at one time you come up and then you tend to be subscribing to another organization, that is what is expected of the people who belong to that institution to attack you. But what is very important is that if people learned of all those dynamism, then they wouldn't be worried of what comes out of people, because that is normal. If that's what even People Power movement or People Power supporters are always doing when somebody comes up and goes to another institution, another coexistent institution. Therefore, with Stella Nyanzi, the idea that she came up with was very, very interesting, because it was uniting the the opposition figures together. And for me, that is what I always advised when it came to, if they were to come up, if you could have a combination of BSJ, Bobiwine, and Mugisha Muntu in the opposition, those three figures can make up something very, very paramount. And I think even the president himself doesn't want to have such a kind of thing happen.
You know, people may be disagreeing with her because they don't see Bobi, especially if this is supporters, maybe disagreeing with her because they don't see Bobiwine becoming a president. They want to see Dr. Kizza Besigye becoming a president. Don't you think they also have a right to speak up?
Yeah, they have a right. That's what I'm saying. That is what you call identification protectionism, and they have a right, and it's their right. That's why I said it's normal politics. It's normal politics, and it's the normal social dynamism. But what we have to understand is that these people that are making attack are normal people. For us, that we're discussing these people that analyze the situation. We have that kind of longer lenses that analyze situation. In that regard, I would love to say that, you see, every time has its own greater people. That's why even when you look at the lineage of the prophets were coming at different generations because of what was happening at their time. When you look at the political situation in Uganda right now, it's whether you like it, whether you support whatever organization, political organization, it's now known clearly that it's Kyagulanyi who is trending. Kyagulanyi has a very big number of people when it comes to generational cut across and all that. So it is reality that Kyagulanyi is now having a bigger kind of following, a bigger chunk of supporters when you compare to other political players, especially in the opposition. But when we are looking at situations in comes to bargaining power of political positions, you always have to not look at only the population factor. You have to look at the capacity factor, the human resource. You have to look at even the ability to maintain, because even if you acquire something and you cannot maintain it, then that's another problem. You can look at Mugisha Muntu as somebody who is very organized, somebody who can really try to add up when it comes to organizational structures. And then when you look at Dr. Besigye is very good at planning. And if you have those three people, somebody who is very good at planning and somebody who is very good at organizing, then you have somebody who is very good at mobilizing, because Kyagulanyi is very good at mobilizing, then you make up a very good team. But what I'm saying, as I've mentioned before, that there is now struggle for survival, struggle for identification, and struggle for surface. Who is now, because now when you see what has happened in the last possibly 1 month, Kyagulanyi has been trying to reach out to other people and other members of the opposition, trying to convince them to come up. But I think, as I told you last time, that there is a need to act more actively and more proficiently, so that, because now the time is gone, and there's limited time that we have up to the voting time. So I don't see any kind of that coming out very soon, but there is need for those three people to come up together.
Let me bring in Sar. Thank you, Nudi. Let me bring you in, Sar. First of all, I'm not bringing gender bias here. First of all, she's a woman. She's been in prison. She's been arrested more than 2 times plus, or probably 2 times at least, that for a long period of time. She's been in courts in and out. She disrespected the bail and said, no, I'm staying in prison for her personal reasons. She comes out, she puts a list. And opposition members are saying, nope, what you're doing is wrong. You're disrespecting our party. She's a member of FDC. And she says, Dr. Besigye is not supposed to be the president. Some sort we've heard from you guys in People Power, when people come to disagree with what's happening in your party, everybody starts saying, well, maybe you were bored, maybe you were more. What's your reaction?
I think she's entitled to our opinion. And being a scholar with someone who is intelligent, we must agree, believe it or not, right now, as much as Dr. Besigye is good, and Dr. Besigye is, he's been in the run for the last 20 years. As we speak right now, what is happening is Kyagulanyi is trending. Kyagulanyi right now has the numbers bigger than those of Dr. Besigye, and maybe it could be because of the generational gap. You have those people who have just turned 18, or people who are more from the generation of Kyagulanyi, who believe in him more because they've been around him, they've seen him grow, they've seen who he has become. So you have that, and that number is really huge. So as much as we do not want to dismiss the fact that Dr. Besigye had his run for 20 years, again, we must move with the wave. The beauty with the Western world, what I like about it, the Western world embraces the wave very fast. And you've noticed, you've seen what is happening right now in the world. It is, the wave is Black Lives Matter, and you've seen all either CEOs or big organizations, they are jumping, they are playing with the wave because this is what is going on, and people are saying enough is enough. So Dr. Besigye, we don't dismiss him, but again, we must accept that Bobiwine right now is more training, and he has bigger numbers when it comes to Dr. Besigye. There's nothing wrong with Dr. Besigye becoming a prime minister, because you cannot have two presidents. And the presidency position shouldn't be the ultimate goal, because at the end of the day, we need someone who is going to serve Ugandans. But we need someone. I'll just give you an example. I'm going to draw. Yes?
Hapro was taking away many of FDC supporters, so that's why they had to react. And they have a right to react.
I think they have a right to react, but again, they must wake up and understand that if Dr. Besigye goes back on the ballot and Bobiwine goes back on the ballot, that is dividing the opposition vote. Because I don't believe if Dr. Besigye stood behind Bobiwine, who is more influential right now, who has the numbers right now, even those in FDC, they will not vote for Museveni, they will vote for Bobiwine. So I don't think, I've seen already Mao declaring that he's coming back 2021, and in my head I'm asking myself, why is Mao wasting our time? Because these are people who make us believe they just enjoy being in opposition for the sake of being in opposition. But when it comes for change, when it comes to the real issues of wanting to see change come to Uganda, that is not their problem. They are comfortable with Museveni being on this side and then them being on the other side, because it seems to be much easier than them wanting to have a better Uganda, a different, just like someone is happy being in opposition and saying, oh, I'm the president of DP. That is enough for him. But again, selfishly, what these people forget, there are 45+ million Ugandans who have been affected by the sitting government, and they need to see better. So if opposition leaders continue being just enough, feeling enough and feeling comfortable in their positions as opposition leaders, but they are not willing to add onto and bring the change Ugandans desperately need, then it's so absurd and disappointing. Basically, it is more of giving Museveni another 5 years. Why is Mao coming onto the ballot box? Why are you dividing the opposition for? Because we must say, you know.
I want to first read for you. I want to read for you the comment from the post from Dr. Stanyans 5 hours back. He said, "FDC, stop sexualizing my politics." She continued to say, and I quote, "When I proposed unity of all forces opposed to dictator Museveni, many members of FDC tried to shame me by insulting my lover. They were deeply offended at my suggestion that Dr. Besigye become prime minister to Bobiwine as a president. They attacked my sex and sexuality." Now, that's the new politics that you guys in opposition are now playing. You are forcing other people to do things they don't want, and now you're attacking each other.
One of the things I hate and don't like about opposition politics, one is extremism. And I've always told people, I'm a very liberal person. You'll find me talking to someone, whether they are in NRM, whether they're in FDC, I'll speak to everyone. The extremism I see, and sometimes I talk with my friends, is that if someone is in NRM, people want you to treat that person as a traitor. They want you almost to find them and kill them. I don't play that kind of politics. I'm a liberal person because I believe we are human beings. Everyone is allowed to have divergent ideas. And for me, the most important bit would be, if I'm talking to someone who is in NRM, I have more opportunity and chance to show them what they're not seeing. Maybe they're not seeing what I'm seeing. So I have that opportunity to show them instead of, you know, shunning them away and saying A, B, C, and D. So the other thing is one of the, and she's right. When people don't have, and I commented on Apples and I said, one of the things we are lacking in Uganda politics is a lot of political immaturity, that when they fail to find something, when they fail to debate with you on, or come to the level of maturity and come to the level of intellectuality you have at that point, what do? They go and attack your personality. They go and attack your private life. That's what is happening to her. They're attacking her lover, they're attacking this and this, because they failed to debate with her on the same level she's at to. Because believe it or not, whether they like what she said or they don't like it, honestly speaking, when you put Dr. Besigye and Bobiwine on a weighing scale right now, the weighing scale is not equal. Bobiwine is more popular. Bobiwine has more followers right now, just like it was 20 years ago. When you got Semogere and put him on the same weighing scale with Dr. Besigye, Dr. Semogere would follow. And we must know, and this is what people should understand, that in the next 20, it could be 20 or 10 years, there will be another Bobiwine. And us who believe in the Bobiwine of today will be like, no, we cannot. You know, but there will be another person who is more popular, who is more influential. So we must believe or accept that the popularity of Dr. Besigye, when it comes to this generation, because we must believe and understand, Dr. Besigye comes from the last generation. And this young generation where Bobiwine fits in, they do not know much of what happened then. Their problems are current. Their problems are problems of the 21st century, and they need someone from their generation to sort out those problems. They don't know the 19th century and all that. They do not know. If you tell them we fought, went to war, people have not experienced that. Either they were babies or they had just been born or not yet born. So they don't understand what you're telling them about war. They understand the current things. If you're talking to this generation about COVID-19, they understand because they've lived the effects of COVID-19 and all what comes with it. If you talk to them about unemployment, they've lived with it. They know what it means to study, go to university, study, get a degree, and come back home and be jobless. So they need someone who understands their problems in this current situation.
Before I leave you, I think I'll have to come back to that same issue with Richard. But before I leave you, sir, give me just a little bit of details. Yesterday, you guys in People Power launched the Red Friday. The Red Friday. What impact did it create based on the discussion that took place yesterday? Before I go to Richard.
I think the biggest impact would be because you're having people who believe in change on different continents and different areas come together to discuss and share ideas. Because sometimes, usually, because we are here, we are sitting, it's us in the US, but then you get when you have such a platform, and I've had suggestions where they say we should have it twice a month, beginning of the month and end of the month. And I think the team is still debating on when exactly it should be there. I think it is very important for people sitting in different areas, having different experiences, to come together and share those experiences, and use that same platform. It helps because you had people in Uganda, you had people in South Africa, you had people in UK, you had people in USA. So it becomes like a parliament of Ugandans sitting in different areas with different experiences who are desperately wanting change, to come together and share their ideas and see how they impact and cause change to the situation in Uganda.
All right, Sarah, thank you. Now, Richard, I'm coming back to you on the issue of opposition and the controversies and the confusion that is taking place in your political parties, your movement, everyone. Someone brings in an idea, and then because you disagree with them, you abuse them, you attack their personal lives. Is that a new politics that you members in opposition are playing nowadays?
No, let's analyze this thing very well. Nyanzi has her own opinion based upon what she knows and the political climate that is in the country. But what is the issue at hand? The issue at hand right now is that there are three things. It's now the opposition, Bobiwine, who's taking over leadership, and then there's Besigye, who has FDC, and now you have this military general, who I don't agree with actually, Mugisha Muntu. Now the FDC say, okay, we can allow you to lead the country through FDC, but under our rules and constitution. Remember, FDC has its own constitution, how it follows, how they put a leader in power, how they remove him. See, you have to that. They are there because I have the FDC constitution. Now you have Honorable Kyagulanyi, who is a liberator of the country, because the crisis now in Uganda are two. It's the liberation of the country and changing of the leadership to proper leadership in Uganda, because he promised to make a new country. Because if he goes under their constitution and under their authority, he will not be able to change whatever they want. Now, this is what I'm seeing for me. I'm going to give you a working example of what happened in Congo, in the liberation, independence of Congo. There are three things. There was this man, Kasavabumbu, I think that's the name, who was the president that had no power. Then you had the prime minister, Patrice Lumumba, who had some power. Then you had a powerful secretary of state, who was Mobutu. What happened in between, if you're not very careful, could happen in Uganda. We could fight a liberation, get Museveni out of the country, and it could get into the same scenario where there will be change of leadership to bring in dictatorship into the country. Remember, all these people, like Mugisha Muntu, are not fighting for the change. They are fighting for the leadership of the country, and they have military background. There could be military maneuver. We could lose Uganda again to the same scenario like Congo is in today, because this is what exactly happened. What I'm telling the people of People Power and Honorable Chago is to read very well the history of Congo, and let us be vigilant. Let's open our eyes. Let's see that we fight a struggle that will change Uganda, as Honorable Chago promised us, for a new, better Uganda for everyone to enjoy, including Mugisha Muntu, but not changing of guards and then military maneuvers and such a thing. If he says that he cannot do such a liberation, then let him go independent.
All right, sure. So I want to thank you, Nudin. We've had all these, and I don't know. I always ask you the same question. Members of opposition, you seem to be promising Ugandans a new Uganda that's going to have milk and honey and chocolate. But what happens the following day, you again come back and fight against each other. So, guys, we are running out of time. I've just been informed by my producers. But your final statement. Let me start with Nurdin. When you look at the politics of the country.
Thank you so much. Thank you, David. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, co-discussant. What we have to understand is that Uganda is for everybody. On top of that, everybody that you see in Uganda that is fighting, whether from the opposition or the government, what they have in their mind is that they're always fighting for Uganda. That's what they always think. It's now we to judge or to analyze who is fighting for Uganda. The biggest problem, as I've always mentioned, in Ugandan opposition that is going to affect their political program is thinking that possibly where they belong, that institution where they belong is the only right one. The others are not right. And also another thing that is affecting, that is eating up the opposition in Uganda that might affect their political program is that to think that Kyagulanyi, especially the People Power movement, to think that Kyagulanyi is going to work by himself to reach that is not possible. Even when you look at when Museveni came to power, he couldn't handle the situation. That's when he brought in many people that were experienced, people like Temoge, people like NYANZI, people like they all brought in Savannah. They were brought in to cement the kind of political experience, bring out their political experience. Okay. So I believe that if People Power movement wants to succeed, it has to court all those other political players and convince them to be their side. And on top of that, there are certain other political figures or political players that really don't matter, though they matter with their ideas. For example, when you look at the current situation, the trend is now taking its part. That kind of evolution or political evolution, it always comes up. And you remember what happened in 2016. People were saying there are two big fish in the opposition, but at the end you found out that there was only one fish. So the political trend can shape at any particular time, regardless of whatever you can push for. And you know, it is very, very difficult in the political political trends of Ugandan situation that we have very two strong political players in the opposition. At the end, if they fail to add up and come together, I believe one of those three that we are talking about is going to emerge as the political figure, the big fish, and the rest will have to will find their way out. Thank you so much.
All right, sure. Richard, your take.
Yeah, my prayer is this to the Ugandan, especially the Ugandan in the diaspora. Be more engaged, be more vigilant, and be well organized, because now the things that are moving in Uganda, the way we have explained to them, our only response to such a situation in Uganda, in case there are maneuvers that we don't want, will be the diaspora that can now reach out and solve these issues. Is my prayer. The rest of it, we shall see. But be vigilant. The people in the diaspora, be well organized and vigilant.
All right, sure. Sorry, Joy.
My prayer is that we all unify opposition members with the likes of Dr. Besigye, Mugisha Muntu, and all the rest. My only prayer is they come to a consensus and we have one candidate on the ballot. Because for sure we know President Museveni is going to rig the vote. He has always been doing that, but we need a block vote, and that block vote takes other players. Just like Nurdin said, we should not even assume that we are going to do this alone. We need other stakeholders to help us fight this together. So we need that. Because we should never dismiss. Dr. Besigye still has supporters. There are supporters who believe in Mugisha Muntu. So we need all these teams to come together and we front one candidate that is gonna take on President Museveni, who arranges the elections himself, who has the machinery to rig, who has everything. So we need a block vote that becomes really completely hard for him to steal it.
All right, sure. Thank you, sir. Now let me do my closing take. Well, the issue we have in Uganda is that we all want change. At least most people want change. They want a new government. They want new leaders. They want everything changed. But here's the truth: regardless of who is in power, as long as you're poor, you're never going to have that change. We should remember there are key players who determine the political landscape of any country. You, as a common man, in most cases, you're the last person. They start with corporations. They again go to the politicians, then the media. Sometimes it's vice versa. But most importantly, the corporations determine. Now, you as a Ugandan, you as a common man who is looking for this change in the country, economically, how are you standing? How much power do you have to influence these politicians? At the end of the day, you will find that it's these corporations, big financial giants, that determine the political landscape of the country. And if the opposition cannot tap on this corporate world, if they cannot move a step ahead, the chances of making a difference may be different. Have a great week. My name is David Obura, and guys, I want to thank you for your time. I hope to see you again next Saturday. Please, I've had demonstrations going on all over the world. Black Lives Matter. Now we've had a Blue Lives Matter coming up. I don't know, but have a great week. Thank you for the time.
You're welcome.
All right then.